Well, good morning, everybody. In case you missed it, my name's Jeff. It's okay, sometimes I forget it too. So anyway, it's so good to be with you this morning. We're continuing our study on mission, what it means to live on mission. And this morning, we're going to start out looking at what's really Jesus' last conversation that he had with his disciples. And if you think about that, you think about that being in Christ's mind as he is talking to them. And you go, wow, to be aware that this is your last chance to say something to somebody, and how much thought and significance he placed on that conversation, really wanting to convey the most important things on his heart in that. So it has an extra weight to it that it's kind of his last words before he returned to heaven. So let's take a look at that. This is in Acts chapter 1, in verse 7 and 8. Jesus said to them, "It's not for you to know the times or dates the Father has set by his own authority." They were kind of trying to figure out what his resurrection meant. And I love that right off the bat, he gives them this permission to not be distracted by things that are not theirs to know. I feel like there's so much in the world that I just can't figure out. And he's like, it's not about understanding everything. It's not about knowing all the answers. But he says this, he says, you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you. You're going to have strength for everything you need to do. Even though you may not know everything, you will have the strength. And he says, you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. That is a big vision he's laying out for those disciples, right? I mean, that's massive. You think about being in Galilee and thinking, I'm going to the ends of the earth. That's probably beyond their comprehension of what that could even mean for them. But it's something that echoes what he had said in the Gospels when he said to them, go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation. Like there is this vastness to it and that idea of going to the ends of the earth. If you were to look at a map here, the little red dot indicating approximately where Jesus delivered this message, and you go with what we know of in Scripture and then tradition that came up out of the church afterwards, we know that Peter made it as far as Rome. James, the brother of Jesus, is believed to have made it to Spain, and according to tradition, Thomas made it as far as southern India. And you go, that's pretty remarkable. That is a lot of travel for that era and a huge distance, probably much of the known world at that time. But if you're taking Jesus literally, you go, well, it wasn't quite the ends of the earth. And if you look at this map from Jesus' perspective, you go, well, Tacoma, Washington is the ends of the earth, right? We are here at the ends of the earth today. I like thinking about it that way because, well, for a couple of reasons. One, I feel like every time I think about missions-related stuff, I kind of put myself in the center and think about the ends of the earth is way far away. And to go, it's kind of humbling to realize that we are the product of mission before we're ever engaged in mission. And also to go, it takes a piece out of the equation. When I was growing up, and you might have gotten this from last week when I was talking, I kind of was a bit of a burdened child. But I grew up in church, and I can remember the missionaries coming through and these heavy calls to missions and saying, really, if you weren't going, you really had to have a call to stay because really the Lord wanted you out there. I'm 8 years old, and I'm going, I'm going to miss my mom. I don't want to go to Africa. I don't want to go to China. So there was also then this just enormous sense of guilt of like, I really should want to go and do Christ's work. But what if we're starting from the ends of the earth? What if we're already here? We're already on this mission. We are part of the fulfillment of Christ's word to those disciples in that last conversation. And so it's already beginning here. But here's the thing, and you already got a little peek of this slide, but the ends of the earth isn't the end of the story. There's so much mission still to happen. There's so much work still to be done. And you might be going, okay, well, the gospel continues to move ever outward. That's what it does. And you go, well, what is sort of the end game here of where it is headed? What's happening here? I'm so glad you asked. Because we have these kind of bookend texts this morning. We've got Jesus' words to his disciples, sending them out. But then we also have this picture in the book of Revelation where we are given a little, John has this vision of eternity and the throne room, and we're given this little picture of what eternity is going to look like as a result of all this mission work going on. And rather than read the text for you myself, I've enlisted some help. So I'm going to ask those of you who have been tapped for this role and have been willing to take part in this little experiment. We're going to have them all come up here. I'm not even going to put the text on screen. You'll see why in a minute. But I would like you to just sit and listen to it in a little different way and experience this passage from Revelation. I'm going to step over here so you can see better.
After this I looked, and behold, a great multitude that no one could number, from every nation, from all tribes and peoples and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes, with palm branches in their hands, and crying out with a loud voice, "Salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb."
Isinisigaw nila, ang kaligtasan ay nagmumula sa ating Diyos na nakaluklok sa trono at sa kordero.
큰 소리로 외쳐 가로되 구원하심이 보좌에 앉으신 하나님과 우리 어린 양에게 있도다 하니
Proclamaban a gran voz, la salvación viene de nuestro Dios, que está sentado en el trono y del Cordero.
Et ils craignent d'une voix forte en disant, le salut est à notre Dieu qui est assis sur le trône et à l'agneau.
ពួកគេបានបានលឺសំឡេងយ៉ាងខ្លាំងថាសេចក្តីសង្គ្រោះស្បែកលើព្រះជាម្ចាស់របស់យើងតែកូនតែលឺបលាងនៅស្រែកលឺកូនជាម
Again, salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb.
Isinisigaw nila, ang kaligtasan ay nagmumula sa ating Diyos na nakaluklok sa trono at sa kordero.
구원하심이 보좌에 앉으신 우리 하나님과 어린 양에게 있도다 하니
Proclamaban a gran voz, la salvación viene de nuestro Dios, que está sentado en el trono y del Cordero.
Et ils craignent d'une voix forte en disant, le salut est à notre Dieu qui est assis sur le trône et à l'agneau.
ពួកគេបានបានលឺសំឡេងយ៉ាងខ្លាំងថាសេចក្តីសង្គ្រោះស្បែកលើព្រះជាម្ចាស់របស់យើងតែកូនតែលឺបលាងនៅស្រែកលឺកូនជាម
Thank you so much. Thank you. Are there any languages out there that I missed that somebody can translate on the fly and wants to read the verse? What's that, Brady? Sarcasm. Yeah. Well, let's read this all together in English. Salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb. Any reaction as you heard that this morning? Anything that it brought up for you or that you felt? So humbling. Yeah. I mean, to think of, there are thousands of languages that will be represented in heaven. What an awesome thing to think of. And I don't want to cut anybody off. Any other things? Overwhelmed. Yeah. Yes, looks way different everywhere. Yeah, Ron? Yes. It is such an amazing picture. And we'll talk a little bit about that here. I love that John's vision that he's seeing here is not just a sea of people in white robes, but he sees people from every nation, every tribe, every culture, every language. There is something that has been preserved that is distinct about identity in heaven that is important and unique about who each one of us is, and that is all part of what has been included and what the gospel is always going out and reaching more people to bring into that fold. I love especially that he makes this note that it was people from all languages. In order for him to know that, he would have had to be hearing multiple languages at that time. And you go, that is really powerful. I love what the translator Harriet Hill said. She said, when God speaks to us in the language we learned in our mother's arms, the message of his acceptance of our identity penetrates the very fiber of our being. I thought that's so good. There is something about hearing God in the language that you think in is important to know that God doesn't just speak English. God doesn't just speak Hebrew or Greek. He speaks our heart languages. And I love that so much. I also love if we just think about language for a second, and we think about the origin of language, and you go back into the Bible story of the Tower of Babel, and you see this human endeavor to achieve the way to God, figuring out some way for humans to, on their own, under their own power, reach God. And God says, no, that is not how it's going to happen. And he confuses the languages. He introduces this division, this break, this fracturing of communication that happens, that causes turmoil, that causes all kinds of pain. And you go, here in the origin of language, it represents division and judgment and brokenness. But how awesome is the gospel of salvation that says even that gets brought into the kingdom and becomes part of what enhances God's praise in eternity, is taking all this division and covering over it and bringing it together, bringing everybody together around the throne. And it isn't by giving everybody the same language. It isn't by giving everybody the same color or the same culture. It is by giving everybody the same Savior that everybody can say salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb. That's what unites us, right? And I think especially in a week like this one, where our country is experiencing, and the church is experiencing such fracturedness and such division, even Christians feeling so much intensity this week on different sides, and you go, there are things that are not ours to know, but we have power to bear witness to Christ and say salvation belongs to nobody other than God. That is his alone. That is our testimony. And I love that when this multitude is in heaven, they are bearing witness. That is what they continue to be on mission. They are saying salvation belongs to God. That is the same message of the church all through history, is to point to Jesus and say, it's Peter saying salvation belongs to no one else. It's the author of Hebrews saying Jesus is the same yesterday and today and forever. That is the mission that we are on and bearing witness to. But God's way of doing that is to do that through our diversity, not by eliminating diversity. My dad sent me a picture from the chapel in their retirement community, and he was just struck by this image of the stained glass window and the reflection on the floor. And he's like, there's just one light on the other side of that glass, but how beautiful it is coming through all that glass and all that different color and picture that gives us an enhanced beauty. And I think that's so true just of what the church is intended to be as well. Okay, well, back to our mission. Here is what Paul says is what we're about. He says, this is the way any person is to regard us, as servants of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. I think how we could see ourselves would be, we are stewards of the gospel at the ends of the earth here. We're stewarding this gospel that Paul says is a mystery. Well, here's the question. How do you steward a mystery? How do you take good care of a mystery? You need to know what the mystery is, which fortunately Paul tells us. Anybody know what Paul says the mystery is this? Anybody got it? I'll help you. Christ in you, the hope of glory. Right? That is the mystery of the ages that has now been revealed. It's Christ in you, the hope of glory. Not just Christ in general, the hope of glory, but Christ in you. So how do you steward something like that? Well, I would say first off, it's not by explaining it. I think for a long time, I thought that the goal in mission, especially, was for me to have this very sort of well thought out, logical explanation that could answer all the questions anybody had and be very much fact-based. But it's much more than that. Alexis Abernethy, who teaches at Fuller Seminary where I went to school, she said, God reminds me that it's not just the content I care about. I care about who you're becoming. Because sometimes we can make it all about content. And we can't disembody the mission because it is Christ in us, the hope of glory. And so, how do you steward it? It's not by explaining it, but it's by attending to it. It's by attending to it. How do you attend to what God is doing within you? It is unique to your story and not to anybody else's, and going, God, how do I pay attention more to that? That's what's yours to share. I saw a story in Christianity Today about this man named Dilly Lumjo, who back in 2011, he was living in a refugee camp in Nepal, a Bhutanese refugee camp. So very specific camp, 12,000 people in this camp in Nepal. And you go, could you be in any place where you felt further from God, out of God's view, than in a refugee camp? You'd feel totally forgotten. He and his whole family were Hindu. In fact, he had just conducted a Hindu funeral. And that night, he had this dream where his mother-in-law came to him and said, you can't come into this house unless you believe in Jesus. And in the dream, there was this flash of lightning and a voice from heaven that said, what she's saying is true. You need to believe. And he just fell to his knees and was weeping in his dream. And he woke up and he went and found a pastor in the camp and said, I think I believe in Jesus. And the pastor walked him through the gospel. He gave his life to Christ. And his whole family thought he was absolutely crazy that God would meet him in this way. But he ended up, long story, he came to the United States with a resettlement program and now has this just incredible ministry to the Bhutanese community, and people are responding to his story. And here's the quote that he gave the reporter. He said, what God gives us, we gospel. And the reporter wrote that up for her editor, and her editor kept scratching it out and saying, gospel's not a verb. And then they began to talk about it more, and they were like, there's actually something really profound in the way he's expressing this. That the things that God does for us, what he gives us, whatever you have in your life, that experience of Christ in you, the hope of glory, that is what you gospel. That is what you have to share with other people. And that can be through the hardships. Again, back to that story of redemption, of God taking even language that was a source of division and judgment. Whatever is going on in your life that may be a pain point, that's what God has given you, so gospel it. Let him take it and transform it and redeem it and use it in the world. You know, I think part of being on mission is also recognizing that attending to what's going on in us is also recognizing the value of that multitude and those other voices around us that may be from completely different worlds than ours. This is a last-minute addition here to this message, but you know, back when I was in seminary, we had classes. Some of our classes were in the building that is now Anchor Central. It was Tacoma Alliance back in the day, but so I had a class there one time, and I remember being in the class, and you know, it's a bunch of 30-something white seminary guys, and then there was this one Korean woman who was in the class who didn't speak much English. It was broken, and she usually sat in the back and didn't say much. And quite frankly, to my shame, I had kind of just written her off as somebody who didn't really have much to contribute to my faith or my learning. You know, it was kind of this academic setting, and I just didn't pay much attention to her because she just didn't seem like she was adding a lot of value to the class. So we in this one conversation we were talking about persecution. And we're going, you know, and as a concept. And so all us young bucks are sharing our thoughts and just kind of spewing about it and going on. And eventually at one point, she speaks up and she said, you know, I grew up in Korea and my family was Buddhist. And I would walk home from church every Sunday knowing that when I got home, my dad was going to beat me. And all of a sudden, all of us just felt like we were in the presence of a saint and going, we have so much to learn from each other, that we have no idea what other people's experiences are and the value that is in lives that are faith that is hard won by people, that it was a really good reminder for me that part of attending to what's going on in our lives is to be connected with that multitude, the global church, and bearing witness to the fact that what unites us, it's not politics, it's not ideology, it's not culture, it's Christ. It is that salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb. That is the one thing that pulls us together. But we do have an opportunity specifically here that I want to talk with you about this morning, that Anchor has become connected to, that helps us connect with that global church. So here's another map to show you. The different shades of blue show you where there's different amounts of Christian influence. So the darker the blue, the more Christian influence is in that part of the world. So you can see that this chunk of the world is pretty light blue. Not a lot of heavy influence today, which is ironic given that in that is where Jesus first sent out his disciples. That is what is known in mission circles as the 1040 window, because it's the 10 degrees latitude to 40 degrees north latitude, that little pocket. So Anchor has some involvement already in places within that, in Muslim countries and the Middle East, that is supported by the network. But also, we have this new opportunity where you can actually get involved personally. And it's actually, when you think about it, it's now going to the ends of the earth, practically from where we are to the Philippines. And so I'm going to invite James Grout to come on up from One Child. And thanks for being here, James.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm new around here. My name's Jeff, by the way.
Jeff, good to meet you.
Sorry, Kat, I had to. But I'm not as familiar. Some people here may already know about One Child, but could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and the ministry and what it is that you guys do?
Yeah, thank you. What a privilege to be here. And I just want to say, great message. Really, so good. So helpful for me. Actually, I started weeping a little bit in the front row before I came up, so I had to dab my eyes. But I really appreciate your heart for helping us capture our heart for the world. So you're my people. You don't know that, but you are my people. I'll explain myself. This is a Christian and Missionary Alliance church. Most of you might know that. Some of you might not know that, but you're part of a denomination called the Christian and Missionary Alliance. And I grew up in an Alliance church in Calgary. My dad was a pastor at an Alliance church up in Calgary for 20 years. So I was a pastor's kid in an Alliance church. Then I went to an Alliance Bible college. God called me into youth ministry, and so I went to Alliance Bible College out in Minnesota. And then after that, I got a job at an Alliance church in Wheaton, Illinois. So I was a youth pastor in Wheaton, Illinois for 20 years. And then after that, I went to the National Youth Office for the Christian and Missionary Alliance in Colorado Springs to become the National Youth Director. So I'm thoroughly Alliance. I'm about as Alliance as you can get. You might not feel very Alliance, but you are my people. I am one of you. You don't have to claim me, but I am one of you. So. Let me tell you a little bit about One Child, because after I left that role as the National Youth Director, I went to work for this organization called One Child. And I'll just tell you, on the way to my interview, my very first interview with them to get this job, I thought to myself, and I actually kind of said to God, should I even be applying for this job at a place called One Child? Because I don't really like children that much. And it's not true. I do like children. I have children. They're wonderful. But I'm a youth ministry guy. I just thought, I love youth ministry. I'm passionate about youth ministry. Could I ever be as passionate about children's ministry as I am about youth ministry? But what I discovered was that what happens in our programs around the world is we call ourselves a global community of child champions. So everywhere that we work around the world, there are volunteers who come from local churches who are pouring into the lives of children. They're giving of themselves so that a child has a chance to thrive. And the places where they're doing that are pretty rough areas, what we call hard places. They're in the slums. They might be in very remote, poor villages. They might be a gypsy people who aren't necessarily wandering, but they don't have any particular rights in the country that they live in. It's very hard places, spiritually hard places, like in the Middle East. And in those places, those volunteers, those child champions are giving of themselves so that those kids have a chance to thrive in spite of everything that is up against them. But I also want to tell you that child champions exist right here in this room, I promise you. Some of you if you're a tutor or a teacher or a parent, if you're an uncle or an aunt, if you're pouring into children at some stage of their life and giving of yourself, you've become a champion for that child. And I hope all of you, at some point in your life, you can look back and say, yeah, there were people who were my champions, even when maybe my parents weren't, or my teachers weren't. There was somebody who was on my side, somebody in my corner. That's what we do around the world. We make sure that children living in really hard places are in programs where people know them, care for them, and make sure that their best interest is at heart.
That's great. Yeah. So in this case for Anchor, what you're doing is you're connecting with us with a partnership with a ministry in the Philippines called Voice of Grace, right? Correct. So can you tell us a little bit about what they provide for kids and teens that they might not be getting in their life otherwise, and what the specifics of this opportunity look like? Yeah,
so everywhere that we work, there are children, they always are lacking something, and we want to address, as much as we can, we want to address everything that they do not have in their life, the scarcity that they have of certain things. So that includes things like medical needs, if they need medical screening, if they need help with medicine or immunizations or something like that, we want to be able to help them there. Nutrition, we want to be able to make sure that children are being well fed, and so they sometimes get to eat, or they get to eat every time they come into the Hope Center, but we want their parents to know how to shop better, how to feed them better, how to not just give them something that'll fill their stomachs, but will give them no nutrition. So we work with them on that. School is a huge part. Education is really important. The longer a child stays in school in those situations, the much better chance they have at breaking the cycle of generational poverty that's kept their family down for years and years and years. So keeping children in school as long as we possibly can by giving them tutoring and extra help. Socialization, it's a weird word to say, but the best way to say it is we want children to have a safe place where a child can be a child. Children deserve to be children, but children who grow up in those communities, they have to grow up fast. They grow up way faster than they should. They don't get to experience what my children got to experience when they were growing up, which was just their innocence, just their naivety. And children in those communities aren't always safe, and we want to surround them with safe people in a safe place. And then I said, these volunteers, the people who work in those communities, they all come from that local church. So we're connecting you to a local church in the Philippines who is caring for kids in their community with a program called Voice of Grace. And those children get to hear the gospel, not just proclaimed, but they actually get to watch it lived out in those people who are caring for them. So when they find out that these people love them, and then they understand that that love actually comes from the fact that God loves them, then they begin to experience what it's like to live in a gospel-centric kind of atmosphere. And they get to hear about the Jesus and his sacrifice on their behalf. So all of that is called holistic child development. But that's the secular word. Holistic child development, the Christian word, if you wanted to say it that way, is holistic child discipleship. We're raising up disciples of Christ from children who are in their homes, are probably very far from God when they first enter the program.
So, and this church that is there in the Philippines is also an Alliance church, as I understand it. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So kind of part of the same network already.
Yeah.
And so what exactly is Anchor's role in that relationship? How is that playing out?
So I don't know how many of you have ever sponsored a child before, but in most situations, sponsoring a child it's you and that child. You're a sponsor and that child, and that's the relationship. And there might be an organization involved, but what we're doing is we're creating a church-to-church partnership so that all the children that are going to be sponsored, and by the way, we're doing this in all 3 locations of Anchor this morning, all the children that are sponsored today, they all come from that same community. So you're now not just connected to a sponsored child, but it's also a community to a community. It's a pastor to a pastor. It's a ministry, an outreach ministry here. You're reaching your community here. You're now going to be partnering with a ministry that is reaching out into their community there. And a lot of people call One Child a sponsorship organization. I like to refer to us as a church health organization. We care about the health of churches here and there. And one of the things that's going to be true after today is that you all, as all 3 campuses, you all, or 3 locations, will all be connected together in one community through One Child, through the sponsorship and the relationship that you have there.
And I understand you're rolling out kind of a innovative tool.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about Bridgely?
Yeah, I'll keep it as short as I can. Child sponsorship has been around for about 100 years, and it's pretty much unchanged in 100 years. 100 years ago, you would sponsor a child and then have an ability to write a letter to that child, and they would write a letter back to you. And that was the extent of the relationship. And some of you have probably experienced that, where you've written letters to a sponsored child, and then 2 months later, you get a letter back, or 4 months later, you get a letter back, and then you forget to write them for a few weeks or months, and then you feel shame, and then all of that happens. So that's sort of the traditional model. It's been around for a long time, and we have recently innovated, and we're going to start doing all of this as global partnerships through a platform that we call Bridgely. It's an app that you can use. So today, if you wanted to sponsor a child, you're going to actually be sponsoring a child, but not just by filling out a card. You'll scan the QR code for that child, and you'll be able to see that child with a little video message just telling you who he or she is. And then once you complete the sponsorship, you can record a message back to that child, and the next time they show up to the Hope Center, they'll be able to hear your message. But inside the app, we're going to create an entire community. It's called a cause community, and you will all be in there, everybody who sponsors. Even if you don't sponsor, you can still join the cause community if you just want to see what's going on in there. And you'll be able to see communication going back and forth from you and that community, which is in a very urban slum area of the Manila area of the Philippines. And so you'll have a chance to actually see what that community looks like. The people there will be sharing updated videos. And anytime something happens, like just recently in that community, there was a huge flood. And they went around to every house and they actually made sure that everybody was okay. But they were filming it as they were going. They were making sure that sponsors knew that their children were doing okay. And so that's the kind of community we want to be able to build. And Bridgely, the app that we use is going to be able to create that for you all. So
I
we're
love
excited
that.
about it.
That's really innovative. That's really, really cool. So if somebody is interested in sponsoring today, what you kind of walked through a little bit of the steps, but
Yeah,
you'll be over here basically, and
yeah. So in where the coffee counter is, there's several children available for sponsorship. We have 20 child profiles like this with us today here. And all you have to do is go and pick one you just choose by, this little girl's name is Sabrina. She's 8 years old. She lives in the Philippines. All of them do. They all come from the same community. But on the back side, you'll see that QR code. You scan that, and it'll take you right to her profile, and you'll be able to sponsor her right away. If you scroll just a little bit, you'll be able to see that video that I told you about, where she just introduces herself to you. And then you tap on the green button to sponsor her. And then once you finish sponsoring her, we want you to join the Bridgely community. That's where the communication and ongoing partnership will happen, so you can see it. So scan the QR code, sponsor the child, and then join the Bridgely community. And I'll be out there to help you all along the way. Once you're done with this, filling out that online, you can take this card home with you. But please don't just take it home with you before you sponsor them. Make sure that you've actually gone through those 3 steps before you take this card home. If you just take it and walk out, we call that kidnapping. I live here in Washington State, and I know that's a felony. So please don't kidnap any of the children.
yeah. Thank you so much, James.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate
it.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. I know the sponsorship for that is $44 a month. And if that feels like too much for you, Venice brought up a really great idea that you can also grab a friend and share the costs and sponsor someone together. We'd love to see all 20 of those cards taken today and to begin to see this community connect with that community there. It's just a really practical way to be engaged in missions. So we are coming to the Lord's Supper again today, which again is part of our way of proclaiming on a regular basis. This is part of being on mission, is this step of coming week after week. And as you are coming forward, you are saying, in effect, salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb. So take a moment and just connect with him this morning on your own story and what is it that he has given you that you can gospel. And when you are ready, come forward and partake in this meal together.